Two, three more chairs. Otherwise, just two. Otherwise, they'll make noise. Just two more. Two on that side. Bas. Yes, that should be enough. Ready? Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharma swarupine avatara varisthaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. So we, after a long interval of about 1 month or more, we are again resuming the discussion on Sri Ramakrishna and his divine play, or Sri Ramakrishna the Great Master, as it was known earlier. And after an elaborate discussion on Swami, by Swami Shardananji on Sri Ramakrishna, saying that we need not ignore the human aspects of the master. Otherwise, the Leela or the divine play remains incomplete. It will remain incomplete because whenever an incarnation comes to this world, he has a purpose. There can be many purposes. When Rama came, he came to destroy the evil regime of Ravana, though he was a great scholar and he was a very accomplished, learned person. But because of his evil nature, he was creating a lot of problems. And also, we all know what happened in the Ramayana. So he had to take the help of positive forces and accomplish the main mission of killing him and restoring the kingdom. He did not grab the kingdom, he gave it to Vibhishana, who ruled the noble brother of Ravana himself. So these were the main missions. But apart from that, he came to show what a Purushottama, a perfect Purusha, is. So that was that was the nature of Ramayana's Ramchandra. So also Krishna came for many purposes. In fact, if you see Janmashtami, I posted some very interesting facts about Krishna, that throughout his life, Krishna suffered and suffered. People don't realize, they just see his exploits, that he killed Kamsa, he killed Jarasandha when he was young. In fact, people don't even realize that he went to school after his Vrindavan, that is around the age of 10, and Mathura and Vrindavan days. When he went to Dwarka, he went to Sandipani, which is near present-day Porbandar. It is in fact in Porbandar. So that is where Sudama and Dwaraka and Krishna went to the same school, Sandipani. So imagine, at the age of till 15, his parents were imprisoned. He lived with his foster parents. And there also, the tyrannical Kamsa was after the children. He was trying to kill everyone, afraid that the child of Devaki will be his destroyer. In fact, it happened, because you can't change destiny. But still, Krishna had to run. His family had to run because there was a drought and they had to leave Mathura and then go to Brindavan. And Brindavan also he did not stay, though he had many, many of the gopis, though he was just 10 years old, he would, because of his divine personality, could attract so many people, the gopis, especially Radha. But you see, he had to leave that place within a year, and they say he never came back to Vrindavan again. So there is some purpose that was served by the Krishna incarnation, that is detachment. no matter how loving he was. Krishna means one who attracts others. So Krishna, Karshayati iti Krishna. So that was right from childhood. Though he had such a difficult childhood, not being able to born in a prison, what can be worse than that? And throughout his life he suffered. Even his death was an accident. Somebody unintentionally killed him while he was taking rest. But he accepted everything calmly. So you see, there is a human purpose also. People normally in the Bhagavata and other things, we try to highlight the demon killing aspect of Krishna and his role in the Mahabharata. If you see the Mahabharata itself, what role he had to play was just a charioteer. He took the humble task of the chariot. He never took up any weapon. He never fought the war. He never ruled as a king, though he could have ruled as a king quietly in Dwarka and enjoyed the kingdom. But he didn't do that. He was always moving, struggling against some situation. Most of the situations he faced since childhood were not were full of suffering. And his death was, when he passed away at a ripe old age of, they say, according to some sources, he had crossed 100. And he decided, and he saw his own Yadava clan. He had run there because of the tyrants who did not allow him to stay here. He had to run away to Dwarka and start a separate kingdom there. And after establishing the whole kingdom, the Yadavas fought amongst themselves, and before his own eyes, he could see his whole clan destroyed because of their foolishness. So, what more suffering can a person endure in life? So, if you neglect the human side and always think of the positive side, then the purpose of incarnation is not served. That is what Swami Shardananji wants to tell us. That if you ignore the human side of Sri Ramakrishna, Rama, Krishna, and Buddha, all their their human side was deliberately suppressed by the devotees because they want to see only the positive side. But the negative side of their life, negative not in the sense that they did anything negative, the negative elements they had to encounter, the suffering they had to undergo, the pain that they had to undergo, all those things teach us how, in a similar situation, we can conduct ourselves. That is also an important part of an incarnation, not just his divine states. So, we see that extraordinary purity, selflessness, faith in the Divine Mother, these were characteristics of Sri Ramakrishna's life. And added to that, practically, there were thousands of visions. Visions belonging to every sect of Hinduism and also other religions, which Sri Ramakrishna had. One person cannot, in his one life, he lived only for less than 50 years. In 50 years, to accomplish so much, so many visions, so many uh, experiences, following different paths, which lead to the same goal, Sri Ramakrishna had to demonstrate. But in spite of that superhuman sadhana and the divine visions, if we focus only on that, Swami Shardanji says, what will a common man learn? A common man will learn more from Holy Mother's life, because in her life, you see, that is why Sri Ramakrishna said, I am leaving you behind. I have done very little. You have to do much more. So she had to carry forward the human side of the master. The master had his human side from which we can learn a lot, and we'll see that 5 or 6 things which every human being quality, which every human being has, but he doesn't use it wisely. We can see how Sri Ramakrishna used that. Forget the divine visions, forget the sadhana, forget all the wonderful things he did. Obviously, we can't do it. Neither will we have those visions. Even if we have one vision of our Ishta, that is a great achievement. So we can't compare ourselves with the wonderful sadhanas but of Sri Ramakrishna, but we can definitely learn from 6 aspects which we discussed last time. I'm recapitulating that the six characteristics which we can learn from are his wonderful memory, how we got it, how we used it. So Swami Shardanji is giving examples. His unique intelligence, not just following what the other people follow in the world. If his elder brother told him, you have to take up a job, he didn't just accept. You just have to earn money, you have to marry like all other people, have a family. He used his judgment, he used his buddhi, intelligence. Then his resolution. The word is known as sankalpa. We all have sankalpas, but our sankalpas are weak because our willpower is not attached to it. We make a sankalpa, I will get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. It is so difficult. Even a simple sankalpa. That's why in all our pujas, there is this sankalpa. Before doing the puja, I thought it was just a ritual that we have to do some sankalpa, take some fruit. Normally it is betel nut we take and in a pan, and then we take a sankalpa, and that sankalpa is dedicated. In our case, we dedicate it to Holy Mother. We can make a sankalpa in our name that the puja that we are starting now, we will finish it as perfectly as possible. Now you may think, what is the need? Every puja, why do you have to do sankalpa? Suppose one is doing puja every day. Why sankalpa is necessary? Because it is a question of habit. So if it is a habit that whatever we undertake, we complete it. That is the idea. Sri Ramakrishna had this sankalpa shakti 100%. So that is why Swami Shardanji says resolution. Resolution means sankalpa. If he decided something, nobody in the world can stop him from doing that. If he says, I will go, suddenly remembered at night, I had told the doctor I will come and collect some medicines. He understood at 11 o'clock, it was almost midnight. Then he suddenly remembered, I had promised I will go and collect medicines. So I should go. Whether he wakes up or not, whether he gives me the medicine, I will go. He went, just loudly shouted, I have come. Of course, he was sleeping at midnight, you can't expect. But he went into the compound and everybody thought it was such a foolish action. You have forgotten it. Okay, go the next day. That is what we will normally do. But Sri Ramakrishna would not be able to sleep that day. Because he said, no, I have taken a sankalpa. I will go whether I get the medicine or not. When I said I will go, whether I get it or not. So you see this resolution, that is one example. Then courage. That is also one quality which human beings, we can follow from an incarnation's life. Then humor. We are always serious and sad. Sometimes Sri Ramakrishna used to, under most difficult circumstances also, he used to, his humor was so much, if you see in the gospel, you will find every time after, he used to make the situation light. Because he knew all the people who are coming have so many issues in their homes. And they will be so much hard pressed. And many things will be there in their mind. So, it was through humor he would like to ease the situation. So these are some of the human qualities which Sri Ramakrishna demonstrated, which are as important as his divine qualities. Human qualities should not be ignored according to Swami Shardananda. Just as I told you, in Sri Krishna's life, it was his capacity to undergo suffering and be detached. See, one of the most important characteristic which we ignore, we just see the divine Leela of Sri Krishna, but we don't understand that this person, when he took avatara, he took upon himself all the suffering, that the maximum possible suffering that a person could have. We don't see that side of his nature because we can learn a lot from that. Born in a jail, went to Gokul, then he went to Vrindavan, where he could hardly settle, then he had to so much challenges before him. Then he has to go to Dwaraka, run away to Dwaraka, start a kingdom. Then the Mahabharata war, he has to try to balance Pandavas and Kauravas. He never took part in the war. Neither did he enjoy his life as a king. But it goes to Dwaraka, then Dwaraka also is full of suffering because the Yadavas quarrel among themselves. So till the end of his life, and then finally gives up his body, hit by an unknown uh, hunter. So we don't see that throughout his life there was one thing, human quality, where he stood out from other people. No matter how much people were attached to him, he was detached. Once he left Vrindavan, everybody thought the gopis, and they were so attached to him. He left at the age of 10, according to his life, 10 or 11. He never comes back to Vrindavan. He gets involved somewhere else. Even after the war, he is detached. He neither takes sides, though he guides, because the Pandavas were devoted to him and then they accepted him. He had given that offer to Duryodhana. I will be on one side, my army will be on the other side. It was he who chose the army, thinking that will be more useful. So he was neutral and he was detached. In spite of all the war, the only person who was not disturbed by this Kaurava Pandava war was Sri Krishna. And even his whole Yadava clan, when they destroyed themselves because of their foolishness, he was totally detached. Not that he did not strive to solve the problem. Every time he tried, but he showed that is how the world will go on. It will go on. And the central message, according to Sri Ramakrishna and also Swami Vivekananda of the Gita, is this: Tyaga, or detachment. Detachment, how to live in this world, do all the work that is expected of us, his duty as a father, as a son, as a friend. See the roles he played. Everywhere he had a particular role to play. And everywhere he played it to perfection. But nowhere was he attached to any of these people around him. So that is the central message of the Gita. So also Sri Ramakrishna's life, Swami Shardanji says, if we ignore these human qualities, like his wonderful memory, his intelligence in making the right choices in life against the wishes of his elders, who advised him to just follow a normal life, marry, have children. He said, I have something higher to attain. I will not just do because everybody else is doing that. So his intelligence in making the right choices, that intelligence, his resolution, Sankalpa Shakti, which I gave some examples, then his courage, his humor, the way he eased things. You see, Calcutta was burning with misery. In fact, he told Ma Sharda before he passed away that you have to look after these miserable people because of so much of worldliness, attachment to the things of the world. They were making the people miserable. So he knew that these people, others saying, if you see some of the characters in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, you will find many of them came. Master Mashai, the very person who wrote the Gospel, had such a difficult domestic life. He was practically contemplating suicide. What serious, uh, uh, more serious things can happen in a devotee's life? There were other devotees. They were struggling with poverty. Some of them did not even have the carriage fare to come to Dakshineshwar. But Sri Ramakrishna took care of every one of them and kept them, uh, uh, encouraged them, and made them enthusiastic with his humor. Many times you will see when some very, very difficult people who used to come with some difficult problems, most of the people who came to him did not come for any spiritual practice, or because their life was so miserable, they thought, at least if we could go, we will get some solace. And they definitely got some solace. Otherwise, why would they come? In fact, Master Masha says that day He would have committed suicide if he had not met Sri Ramakrishna. And after that, it was a continuous journey. Every time he got some time, he used to come, and then his whole life was changed. So also Girish Chandra Ghosh and many other wonderful examples we see how he kept them kept the zest for life alive in them, giving them hope, giving them a lot of hope, not to just give up and consider the suffering that they are undergoing, and trying to uh, make them feel that these things should not deter you from going towards your goal. So he used a lot of humor. If you see the conversation, many times if somebody was committing some mistake, though he knew, he would not directly tell him on his face. He would indirectly narrate a joke. We'll see the examples as we go discussing the great master. You will find the Swami Shardanji will give examples of how he treated each one of his disciples differently. Sometimes through jokes, through humor, he would solve some very serious problem. Very often, you cannot say certain things directly on somebody's face. Then it has the opposite reaction. But he will tell it in such a subtle way. For example, Master Mahashay, when he first came, he there was so much of laughing going on. Though he did not, that Master Mahashay got his lesson when he tried to say something. Sri Ramakrishna very gently corrected him. Though he was in the beginning, he was very direct, but at the same time, Master Mahashay understood. He never felt hurt because he understood that whatever Sri Ramakrishna is telling me out of his wonderful love and compassion. Those are the other two qualities that were characteristic of Sri Ramakrishna. Throughout his life, he had that wonderful sense of humor, love and compassion. And then Swami Shardanji says, the reader will thoroughly understand all of this from the following example. So he's giving examples. He's not just stating this, that the human side of an incarnation or an avatara is as important as his divine aspect, because we get to learn many things from the human side than the divine aspects, which are out of reach of most of us. Now, we know how the fantastic memory he had. In fact, he used to say, my mother could remember the verses of Ramayana, Mahabharata once she heard. They were not literate in that sense, they never went to school. But there were so many jatras, and the whole social structure was so nice that in an unconscious way, these minstrels, the singing minstrels, bowls as they're known, bowls and all, they were moving from village to village, a little food, little shelter, and for that they would transmit some invaluable thing, convey it to the future generations. And children, through stories, through songs, through small plays, they would give a lot of information which would help them to deal with their own lives. So, every village in Kamarpukur and nearby, there used to be these jatras. It's a typical Bengali word. Jatra means it is a drama with lot of songs to keep the people engaged. So even though these young women or old women and the men, they might not have gone to school, they would remember every dialogue, every value that was spiritual value, or the wonderful uh, morals of these divine dramas that they would enact. And that is how they learned. And Sri Ramakrishna himself said, even Swami Vivekananda's mother, he, though he had been to school, he was educated in the Western mode of education. He went to the Scottish Church College, and before that, he went to some schools which were giving a Western kind of type of education and examination system. And obviously, in Calcutta, you could not expect the type of education Sri Ramakrishna got in the rural setting. That is why sometimes Swami Vivekananda envied his guru. He said, we grew up by memorizing and remembering second-hand knowledge from books of some other people's thoughts, whereas my master was the most original person because his education was original. He learnt everything from nature. Nature and the people around, by unconsciously they imbibe all those values. That's why most of these great saints, they came from these rural areas. They were not spoilt by the cosmopolitan culture of, and especially the materialistic education of the West, which was uh, uh, which was there in big cities like Calcutta and Bombay and other places. So village was a ideal setting. So everything which these old children as well as old people and all the people of the village learned was through this drama. And most of these things they were in song form, so that it becomes easy for children to remember. Even the Gita, I was wondering, most of our sacred literature is not in prose form. The first prose literature was Shankaracharya's Bhashya on the Gita. You take the Bhagavad Gita, you take the Bhagavad, take Ramayana, take Mahabharata, take all the Puranas. Everywhere it is in the form of poetry, which can be recited, and then as a result, it can be remembered. Because it is remembering these things that is more important than understanding. The modern Western education, or the modern education, which they were exposed to, gives a lot of importance in understanding. But understanding is one thing, but remembering, smriti, is supposed to be a very important factor. So, the sadhana that we do, the japa that we do, repetition is insisted because that strengthens memory. And strengthening of memory, remembering these things, and making it part and parcel of your own life gives it some spiritual value. Otherwise, we may be knowing all the wonderful scriptures, we may be listening to all the lectures on YouTube or somewhere else, but they don't become part of our nervous system. There is a word which Swami Shardananji will use in the Great Master, that is the most original idea in trying to explain what the Shruti and Smriti is. He says nervous association of ideas, because he was a doctor himself. And he studied medicine. Of course, he did not complete his medical degree because he came to Sri Ramakrishna, but he had this medical background. So he says, what made the huge difference between Sri Ramakrishna and us? Because with Sri Ramakrishna, the sankalpa, or the willpower that was attached to every one of his thoughts, converted those thoughts, those ideas, which in our case remain frozen in the brain. They are in the brain, but they don't manifest themselves in action. To manifest, for the ideas to manifest themselves as action, the sankalpa or the will is necessary. When the will is attached, the ideas become active and they become powerful in our life. So Swami Shardanji uses a word, nervous association of ideas. So take for example, we have this idea that he felt that I shall not touch money. It's a simple sankalpa that he took. Not that he did it throughout his life, but during some sadhana, some period of his sadhana, he had taken a resolve. And people could not believe. In fact, Narendra, who was later on became Swami Vivekananda, doubted, how can a person shrink when he touches a coin? Because in those days, there was hardly any notes. Most of the money was, the transactions took place in coins. So not touching a coin means not touching money. So that was a sankalpa he took. With most of us, we make sankalpas, but we don't carry out those sankalpas because it has not been nervously associated. The idea that I shall not touch money, for Sri Ramakrishna, it was not just an idea in the brain, but it was an idea that had become part and parcel of his entire nervous system. That is what Swami Shardananji will explain as nervous association of ideas. When he said, he really meant it. When he said, I shall go, he will go it. He will go to that particular place. So every action was, every thought followed, and the action followed the thought. So that is why Sri Ramakrishna used to use a Bengali word, man mukh ek kara. Mane, whatever the mind thinks, the tongue utters, and the willpower will enable it to put it into practice. So for him, there was no discrepancy between his thoughts, words, and deeds. They were all one. That is what we mean by the sankalpa. And for that, this memory is very important, because very often we hear so many things. It is a novel thing for us. We listen to the Gita, we listen to the Upanishads. They are just ideas which practically remain frozen in our brain, but they don't become nervously associated. That's why the Shastras, they said, if you are really serious about your sadhana, then you better stick to whatever little you have learned, but just go on repeating it. Then it becomes a memory, then it becomes a smriti, then smriti leads to nervous association of that idea. It becomes so intense in our life. That is why they say japa, you don't have to do so many stotras and recitations, chantings and all this. When finally the guru decides that the shishya has to embark upon a spiritual path seriously, then he will insist on repetition, because it is only the repetition that gives power to the repetition, the mantra. So Smriti is insisted. So hearing these songs was not enough, either for Sri Ramakrishna's mother, Chandramani Devi, but they had developed such a fantastic memory that once they hear it, all the dialogues. In fact, Sri Ramakrishna, once he heard these jatras, and after that jatra party left, he would call his friends, young friends, and say, we'll enact. Then the villagers would be surprised. He said, you heard it just once. Do you remember all the dialogues? Can you reproduce it? Then he, with his fantastic memories, he took the main character and explained or conveyed whatever he had learned. By seeing the drama just once, he could convey it to the other characters of the drama, and they would enact the drama so perfectly. He was the director, he was the lead actor. So that main role, he normally took himself, because he was the only one who heard with so much attention, and the smriti, the fantastic memory that he had, like his mother, was responsible. He could learn by heart all the songs. If you see in the gospel itself, gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, you will find Sri Ramakrishna himself sings more than 172 songs. There are 172 songs, he sings 72 out of them. So around 70. And most of these songs, like most of us, when we are asked to sing in the shrine, we have a book where all the songs are written down. We cannot even remember the songs. When we were in the training center, Swami Atmasthananda, who later on became the president of our order, he would get terribly angry if you brought a book. And he said, can't you remember these songs? Whatever you are going to sing, if you can't memorize it, then don't sing it. So much of emphasis was given. So not only the dialogues, but the songs and many things he could remember. And everybody wondered how he could not only remember himself, but convey it to the other boys who played the drama. So that is one example. And moreover, the smriti, as I said, has its importance when it becomes a nervous association of idea, like Sri Ramakrishna's example. Let me finish that. He said that I will not touch a coin. Now, Narendra tried to test it. He said, okay, he says that voluntarily he may not touch, but unconsciously, if suppose a coin touches him, what will happen? And he was surprised, because when he did the test, he secretly kept a big coin under his mattress, which was not very thick. But still, definitely it was directly not touching Sri Ramakrishna's body. So just to test Narendra with a lot of mischief in his mind, or maybe he was just rational, he wanted to see that how is it possible that he will unconsciously shrink. Because he once said that the moment I touch a coin, my whole nervous system recoils. So he said, let me just test it. And he kept that coin, and you saw Sri Ramakrishna, just the moment he sat, he just jumped up as if a scorpion has, he says, I felt as if a scorpion is stinging me. And he gets up. Then he says, there is something under my bed. Then Naren was so much ashamed that he tested his own guru. So, and he knew that what he said that he did, and not only did, but his whole body system, I mean, the nervous system would react uh, to the idea that was given to uh, that human personality. Human personality, the mind acts upon the body, we know that, but to such an extent that every part of the body, every part of the nervous system would react to this particular touch of the coin. That was demonstrated physically to Narendranath. Then his faith, he tested Sri Ramakrishna in various ways. And then that is how his uh, his faith in his teacher increased. So, Smriti means repeatedly thinking of a particular thing helps you to nervously associate every idea that you choose, that you decide is good for you. It's not that all ideas will be nervously associated. The choice you have to make, or we have to make. That is what buddhi does. Intelligence means here, the buddhi, the choice that we have to make, which ideas we have to hold on to, which ideas we have to repeat, which ideas are useful in my life, and let go of all other ideas. Swami Vivekananda once said to the younger generation that take up 5 ideas. That is a famous quotation, and many people have succeeded even in their worldly careers using these ideas. They've used it in a gross way, but it works. They said, take up one idea or take up a few ideas, make them their life, think of it, dream of it, and till the whole personality is infused or suffused with that idea. And that is the only way you can attain success. Whether it is making money, whether it is succeeding in a career, this secret of repetition or smriti. Smriti comes because of repetition. So a lot of emphasis is not given now to memory, but earlier in the earlier tradition, in fact, books were not allowed. Some of the schools in Kerala, even today, they don't allow Sanskrit schools. They expect you to memorize the whole thing. For example, there are 4,000 verses when you want to learn grammar. Panini Sutras. They are small cryptic sentences. Unless you memorize, you cannot even think of entering the school. So memory, smriti, is given such a great importance. That is why Swami Shardanand is singling out this particular fantastic memory of Sri Ramakrishna, because smriti leads to knowledge. Knowledge which is fruitful. Otherwise, remembering and then forgetting, all of us can do. In fact, most of us can remember so many things before the exams, but after that we tend to forget it because its purpose has been served. So it's not an education system according to Vivekananda, it's just an examination system. So even in those days, when the Western system was just being introduced by Macaulay and all, he said, what the British have succeeded in doing is replace our education system, the traditional education system, with an examination system. That's all they have done. It cannot be called as progress. In fact, he called his own university education far inferior to his guru's education or Sri Ramakrishna's education, who never went to school, because it was far more original, far more effective, far more impactful in life than his own education, which is just remembering some ideas, which he says, remembering the thoughts of others. Second-hand education, that is what he said that. So now we come to the next one. That one example Swami Shardanand is giving. One is of his memory, fantastic memory, which leads to ideas being converted into sankalpa and sankalpa being sankalpa getting converted to concrete actions. So the same way our mantra also works. We think, why should we go on repeating the same thing again? It's only in the repetition that the power of the mantra will be awakened. So the more we repeat, they say, Holy Mother said in our very simple, rustic way, Japat Siddhi. So even if you don't understand the meaning, just by repetition, by a strong memory which leads to sankalpa, that fructifies into a concrete result in our life. But now he is giving another example, Swami Shardanji, of his firm determination. So you all remember that sacred thread or the Upanayana is a very orthodox custom, and especially amongst Brahmins, this social custom was strictly adhered to. That you have to take Upanayana maybe between the age of 6 and 8. That is when the Gayatri is given, which is another wonderful tradition. The Gayatri enables you to awaken the intelligence which remains dormant in a child. So, Dhiyo Yona Prachodayata. Dhi means the intellect which is necessary to make right choices in life. So, that is being taught through this tradition of Gayatri. And Gayatri, though the child is immature, Gadadhar here, though he was hardly 8, according to the tradition which was strictly followed, he had to take the Gayatri mantra from his own father. Of course, he would initiate him into this Gayatri mantra. But there was another ritual associated with that, that is taking alms, the first bhiksha. Because from that day onwards, he becomes a twice born. He is born into a spiritual life where he has to live, he has to take a vow that he will do some, in return for all the alms and all the food that nature gives him, he will educate himself and use that education for the welfare of humanity. That's the idea. That is why the brahmachari or the one who takes Gayatri, when he goes to school, the idea was Gurukul was free. The Guru just depended on the charity of the householders, some Guru Dakshina and other things. Education was given free. There was no commercial interest there. Education was given free with the hope that the food that is given to the twice born means Dvija. A Brahmin becomes a Dvija according to the custom after he takes the Gayatri. That is his second birth, the spiritual birth. And then with that real education, which he will get after the age of, after Gayatri, he is supposed to go to Gurukula and the school where he is given the real education, not only secular education to earn a living, but also the education, simultaneously the wisdom to use that education for the welfare of humanity and for his own welfare. But when this ritual was being done, according to the orthodox custom, only a people from his caste, either his father or mother, or any relative belonging to that same caste, should give the first bhiksha. It's a tradition that was followed for centuries. But Sri Ramakrishna had taken a sankalpa, because when he was very, very small, there was a lady, Dhani, who belonged to the blacksmith caste. You could not, in those days, things were so orthodox that you could not be seen as accepting food from a so-called low-caste woman. But Sri Ramakrishna loved this lady. She was the one who was the midwife when he was born. And she treated Sri Ramakrishna, though she was a widow, she treated Sri Ramakrishna as her own son, gave him so much of love that she used to always have one small desire in her mind, that when Gadai, her Gadai, that was the name, when he gets Upanayana, the first bhiksha he should take from me. Though I may not be his real mother, but I have loved him as much as a mother would do. She had so much love and affection. And Gadadhar also reciprocated and said, yes, I will take bhiksha from you. So, when the final day came and when the Upanayana took place, he was asked to go for bhiksha. the parents expected that he would take bhiksha from them, the first alms. But he said, I'm going to Dhani's house. Everybody tried to stop him. Everybody shouted at him, said, this you cannot do. She is a low caste woman. She may love you, but we can't allow this. This will break all the. But he was so determined. He had taken a sankalpa. He cannot take back his word. So he decided to go and accept. And they had to, though he was so small, was hardly 7 years old, but he decided that sankalpa shakti was mm, demonstrated here. That is what Shardanji says. That once he decides he will do that, he will not listen to anybody in the world, not even his own parents. And he went, took the first bhiksha, and then, of course, he took bhiksha from other people. Now, there is another example of his indomitable courage, which he exhibited right from childhood. You see, in those days in villages, the only way parents could control their children, which is the wrong method, was to put fear and fright in their minds. So, just to prevent them from going out, especially in the evenings, they would put lots of superstitious fear in their minds. They would either say there are ghosts in the night. That's one reason why these children used to get frightened. Or they will say some thieves are there, they'll take you, they'll just kidnap you, and then. So people were afraid. Whereas Sri Ramakrishna, uh, normally this wandering mendicants, there was a story, there was a belief that they used to catch hold of some spiritual people and make them part of their order, and these wandering monks that way. So it was just a rumor, but people believed. And especially in Bengal, the Naga monks who used to come from North India on the way to Puri or some other place, they would see some devoted boy and then they would encourage him. Maybe a few cases have happened where these boys were encouraged or maybe got inspiration to become monks like them. So that is why he was told again and again, he was told Gadadhar would, in the beginning, he listened to his parents. He said, then he found that he secretly observed their conduct, how unselfish they were, how much knowledge they had, how kind they were. Though they did not have much, they would share whatever little food they got with these children. So Naren said, Gadai felt that though these people have a bad name, and my parents and all the elders are saying they're not so bad. So he ventured and he gathered courage. He went there and he became so devoted to them that he would collect food from different houses. And if somebody needed something, he would go and supply. And as a result, they would give him a lot of wonderful, they would tell stories which he would listen eagerly. And one day they found this young 7-year-old boy, Gadadhar, he just expressed his desire, I want to dress like you, with all the matted. So they dressed him in the traditional monastic costume. And that was a big shock to the mother, because he said he was so inspired by this monks that he wanted to imitate. See, that is what happens in children. There is an age, especially between 6 and 10, or even that is known as, they just try to imitate whatever they see. So if a child has some evil habits, maybe you can of course blame it. You can say that his peers and he might have picked it up from school friends, but very often he will pick it up from the parents, because they just imitate. They cannot be told to do this. They don't have that kind of intelligence, or they don't have that kind of buddhi or discriminative capacity, discerning capacity to decide what is right, what is wrong. Whatever they see, they imitate. They don't judge whether it is right or wrong. So if a child is behaving improperly, somewhere it can be traced. Very often it can be traced to the parents. But here we can see Gadadhar's parents were so noble. In fact, you all know, though he lost his father at a very young age, he would never tell an untruth. He even had to leave his village and come to Kamarpukur from Dere, which is near Kamarpukur, just because he would not tell a lie and bear false witness. And the landlord and all, they threatened him. He said, I would rather leave this village rather than tell a lie. So all these things Gadadhar had observed, and they were part of his education. So whatever he saw, whatever he understood, or whatever he literally saw his parents doing, he just imitated that. So naturally, when he went to monks, he would imitate whatever good he found in them. And he came, though it was a shock to his mother, she did not mind because she also was deeply spiritual. Now let us come to, just we have 5 minutes. We spoke of the wonderful humor that he exhibited. Not only was his memory sharp, but he could imitate. Mimicry, there is a saying that one who can mimic others, he can do so only if he has a wonderful concentration and power of observation. It's not so easy to mimic others. We are so obsessed with our own thoughts, our own minds, that most of the thing that we see, we don't register in our mind. So it requires a very attentive mind, a very concentrated, focused mind to minutely observe what he sees. And mimicry may be a humorous thing. But you see, the psychology behind mimicry is that unless you have learned the art of observation and you have that concentration with which you can minutely observe what the other person is doing, you cannot do mimicry. Most of us see things, nothing registers because we are so obsessed and we are so disturbed in our own mind that we don't notice that. But Gadadhar had a peculiar characteristic, if you may call that. And he was famous, and the whole village, though it was in fun, obviously for them it was humor. To see Gadadhar imitating the big landlords, he could imitate practically everyone. So that shows how keen his observation, how much focused and concentrated his mind was. So, lot of Brahmins, for a living, obviously, they would do Satyanarayan Katha, this Katha, that Katha, and they would visit the villages. So, very often Gadadhar, uninvited, used to go to their homes and listen. More than listening, of course, he would listen what they are saying, but he knew they were empty words. They were just doing this job for money. They were priests. They had to earn a living. So he found that, very funnily, that they are saying something and doing something else. They're chanting the mantras perhaps and doing so. Gadadhar, just to mimic them, the sharp-witted Gadadhar observed how silly or how foolish these priests were behaving when they did puja. With all the mistakes, with all the funny things that they did, absent-mindedly, he would remember everything and then he will say, today, see, in puja, this priest used to, of course, without any intention of criticizing or anything, he just did it out of fun. But everybody would laugh. He could even imitate some of the singers just by even imitating their voice. He would reproduce voice. Sometimes people found that he could imitate both the male voice and the female voice. So he could play so many things. In fact, during his marriage, there's a very funny incident that poor Sharda Devi's family did not have enough money, because in marriages there'll be a lot of music and lot of entertainment. That is part of the marriage system in India, that there should be some music, some orchestra. They would hire these people who are specialists. Unfortunately, they didn't have enough money. They were so poor. Then they were all repenting that, see, for our daughter's marriage, we could not even hire a person to. Then Sri Ramakrishna consoled them. He said, don't worry, I can imitate each one of them. And not only that, he sang, he danced just as the music party would do. And also from his mouth, I mean, he was expert enough to even reproduce the sound of the instruments that were played. So much of uh, power of observation, mimicry, and control over his senses, the voice, modulation, and all he had. So, this was another characteristic. Now, we come to the natural characteristics of the master's mind. What was his nature? That now Shardanji is concluding by giving these things. He said, he says, if we study the stories, because we cannot ignore this early life, he's now trying to convince that before we understand or try to understand the second part of the book, which is Sadhaka Bhava, means how Sri Ramakrishna did spiritual disciplines, we have to understand his Balya Leela, his actions, his uh, everything that he did as a child, because that cannot be ignored. He had these qualities, some natural characteristics he was born with. Otherwise, one simply doesn't become great. So he says, by studying the stories of this childhood, whether it is Krishna, Rama, you will find a lot of childhood stories are recited about these incarnations. They were special in a way. So, what are those natural characteristics he's trying to analyze? Now, we should remember that Swami Shardananji must have taken so much of pains because he did not see Sri Ramakrishna as a child. So, he had to depend on the versions, trying to cross check with all the elderly people of the village whom he could meet and ask them and verify it. Like a lawyer, he would mm, gather all the information and then see whether it tallies, whether it is authentic, and then he would note it down. So he noticed one thing in Gadai's life, that the kind of mind Sri Ramakrishna had before he became young, that is, before he started his sadhana. So, what are those qualities? 5 or 6 points he is mentioning based on all the incidents of his childhood. He says, by studying the stories of Master's early life, Balya Leela, we understand the kind of mind that he had before he began his spiritual disciplines. Ideally, even we should have those. The idea here is that if we don't have it, it's the right time to cultivate it before we start our sadhana. What are those qualities? First, these are all very practical things, nothing to do with the high spiritual states. He says his natural characteristic is making a list of a few of them. He accomplished whatever he said to do. One, he never forgot anything he heard, even once. Two, that is sharp memory. He shunned forcefully and immediately any obstacle that prevented him from reaching his goal. So he was so focused in his mind, once he decides sankalpa, makes a sankalpa, this is my goal, this is where I have to go, then no obstacle can stop him. So that kind of certainty, that kind of determination is what characterizes Gadai from other sadhakas. If we have these, then our sadhana becomes easy. The purpose is he is making a list of this quality. So first, he accomplished whatever he set out to do. He never forgot what he heard. He shunned forcefully and immediately any obstacle that prevented him from reaching his goal. Now, we see, he says, that he performed all the actions that he did in the world by placing firm faith in God. That is one characteristic. Then it did not, Swami Vivekananda said, one who does not have faith in himself can never have faith in God. So Swami Shardanji adds, he performed all the actions in the world by placing firm faith in God, also in himself, and also in the innate divine nature of all people. That doesn't mean, Sri Ramakrishna himself said, be a bhakta but not a boka, means don't be a fool. So not that he did not discriminate. If he found certain people with certain tendencies which were not suitable for his goal, he would just avoid, that's all. He would not confront them or try to correct them. He would just avoid. But he appreciated that no matter how bad a person is, there is some innate divine quality. This is what Swami Vivekananda later said. My master had that peculiar, that wonderful quality of finding the least good in all the people, and that is because he had faith in the divinity, innate divinity of other people, that no matter how externally how bad a person is. See, otherwise people like Girish Chandra Ghosh would have been rejected outright by any guru who was living. A drunkard, a person who has committed so many, did so many evil actions, and he openly used to confess, used to drink a lot. So no person who would accept Girish Chandra Ghosh on face value would accept him as a disciple. But the innate divine nature, which Sri Ramakrishna could see through all this facade of external personality, was his special characteristic. He could judge a person. That is why Vivekananda once said, when Sri Ramakrishna says something about some person, I just don't question it. Because from my experience, I have known whatever he said he is saying out of a conviction, not just a judgment he gives based on whether a person will feel good or bad. He could understand, go into the depths of that human personality, understand that person, and no matter what he did or how he lived, he would see that divine quality and try to bring it out. And what were he says he could not accept any idea. This is another feature which Vivekananda pointed out. And he said, I am not fit to talk about my master because I have criticized people. But he said he could not accept any idea tinged with even the slightest narrowness. He could tolerate everything, but saying that my path alone is correct, others' path are wrong. I am correct, others are wrong. That he would not tolerate. Nor could he bear any low or impure thoughts. He was very meticulous about it, not only for himself, but for his disciples. Then, what were the things that guided him? Purity, love, and compassion. One was because he was pure, he tried to see everyone, tried to see the least purity in others and try to bring it out. And that was because he had love and compassion for that disciple and guided him. That guided these three things, always guided him in his actions, his behavior towards others. We realize that this aspirant's mind, this means Sri Ramakrishna as an aspirant, when we try to find out what are the essential qualities of a sadhaka, he says this kind of aspirant, if he is there, could not be deceived by its own thoughts. So his thoughts were so clear that he could not be deceived. We very often deceive ourselves. Our own mind deceives ourselves. But nor could it be deceived by others' thoughts. Keeping before us the characteristics of this my master's mind, we shall be able to comprehend only after understanding what kind of mind he had when he set out to do his sadhana. If you understand that, then you will understand how easy or how difficult it was to be a spiritual aspirant, and we can attribute all the success to these wonderful qualities. And then we'll come, we don't have time. So the first manifestation as a spiritual aspirant after his childhood, now Swami Shardanji says, with this mind, with this kind of education, which he consciously or unconsciously got from his surroundings, primarily his parents. You see, Sri Ramakrishna once said, if my parents were not what they were in nature, I would not have been born here in this family. So you see, it is attributing his goodness or his noble nature because his parents were noble. They showed the way initially. Of course, he learned from everyone, from all the people whom he met. And that resulted in an ideal spiritual aspirant, a sadhaka. Before we start Sri Ramakrishna's life as a sadhaka in his teenage, in his younger days, This was the mind which said right from school days that I will not pursue a breadwinning education. Rather, I will pursue that education which produces right knowledge. Now, this is the first manifestation, according to Swami Shardananji, of a student having his priorities very clear, what he wants to do in life. There's no ambiguity. Just because parents put some pressure, go to the stall, learn this, you can earn some money, you can get some job in Calcutta. That was the intention with which his elder brother brought him to Calcutta. But you see his discriminative mind. He decided that if it does not take me to the goal I have decided for myself, I am not going to pursue that kind of education. The master was then, when he said this, was 17 years old. Of course, it's a age, you can imagine if somebody doesn't go to school till the age of 17, normally he would be considered as an illiterate person. But Sri Ramakrishna was far from illiterate because all the greatest people of Calcutta used to come. Later on, we'll see. And with seeing a very little opportunity in the village of Kamarpukur, with the hope that if he goes to Calcutta, at least he will get some bread-winning education, he was sent to Calcutta. So we'll conclude now. If there are some questions, you can ask. And if there are online questions, no.
I was listening to a podcast on Sri Krishna. There, first time I heard this that Gandhari asked him, Sri Krishna, that he will die in a very quiet death. Nobody will be there with you. There will be no pampering and anything.
Yeah, you accepted that.
And he said, I have arranged my death beforehand. Because you have cursed me,
you become an instrument.
All your merit blinding yourself like your husband, all has gone. You have no merit left.
Yeah, that is one interpretation because you see, when the incarnation has to leave the body, there should be someone instrumental in that. So just as that arrow person who hit him, he was very much upset that accidentally has killed somebody like Krishna. But he consoles him. He said, that was decided by me. You don't take the responsibility. You did not do it out of uh, any bad intention. It was accidental. This is how I have to finish my earthly Leela. So from his point of view, they don't have to take the karma because after all, even Kamsa and all, they say, they were great souls who waited till they died they were killed by him and then they were released. So we do not know, the incarnation acts in so many different ways. How he will bestow his grace on whom, in which way, it is very unpredictable. Okay. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamast.